working moms.
Hey, working dads.
Hey, aspiring working parents.
And allies of working parents.
Are you in search of your pillow?
Does it take you 24 hours just to get out the door in the morning?
Are you the family ATM?
Or the family Uber driver?
Are you on a Zoom call for work while carpooling while also watching a practice?
If so, welcome to our world, the Parents at Work podcast.
I'm Lori.
I'm Jason.
We are married.
And we have two wild and crazy redheaded boys.
We're here to shine a light on the roller coaster ride that is working parenthood. I'm a healthcare lawyer and founder of a working parent community called Mindful Return.
And I'm an executive coach with Ready, Set, Launch, LLC. I wrote a cool book called Relationships to Infinity.
And I wrote a cool book called Back to Work After Baby. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Parents at Work podcast. Today is all about being scholarly. No, not really, but we do have two fantastic moms in academia who are joining us for a conversation today. And Jason, I usually read the first bio and introduce the first person. So how about you do that today?
I love sharing of roles. That is what the Parents at Work podcast is all about, leaning on each other. Thank you, Lori, for letting me kick this off. And it is my pleasure, my pleasure to introduce Professor Elizabeth Grimm, who's a professor of teaching in security studies, I feel safer already, in the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown, specializing in torture, terrorism, international law, and international relations. Dr. Grimm is the co-author of the 2022 book, Terror in Transition, Leadership and Succession in Terrorist Organizations from Columbia University Press, and the 2017 book, Lawyers, Policymakers, and Norms in the Debate on Torture, also from Columbia University Press. Her forthcoming book, Mama Strangelove, or How I Learned to Defuse the Parenting Bomb with IR Theories, will be published this July 2026. Along with her husband, Jacques Arsenault, they are parents to three children, Hugo, 13, Andre, 10, and Lulu, 5, as well as three-legged dog named Crouton. She serves as a faculty in residence at Georgetown's campus and one of 7 faculty members who lives in a residence hall with students. Welcome to the Parents at Work podcast, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much.
Lori, why don't you introduce Catherine?
I will do that. And we were just commenting, we've got Dr. Grimm and Dr. Grimes here together. So we've got.
And while you introduce Dr. Grimes, Dr. Grimm has to go get blondies out of the oven, which is how moms in academia roll.
Exactly.
So we're doing a podcast and cooking at the same time.
Awesome.
Or baking.
Yes. So Dr. Catherine Grimes is a chemistry professor at the University of Delaware, and her role involves teaching in the classroom, directing a graduate program at the interface of chemistry and biology, and running a research group focused on chemical immunology and Crohn's disease. I will also note that she was recently named one of Delaware's top 10 women in STEM for 2026. Woot woot! Go, Catherine! Hey! She's a mom of 2 fun kids. She's got Henry, who is 13, and Grace, who is 10. And she and her husband both work in the healthcare and science field. Her husband, Dan, is a physician and helps to direct the psychiatry residency program in Delaware. I also wanted to just give a quick, fun backstory. Catherine and I first met when she joined a cohort of the Mindful Return program when she herself was coming back to work after parental leave. And since then, she and I worked together using some funding from an NIH grant to develop a parental leave trail guide for graduate students at the University of Delaware. And we'll put a link in the show notes to the interview that I did with Catherine about that and to the trail guide itself, which lives on the internet. Finally, Catherine is so thoughtful and genuine. And today, when I reached into my sock drawer in the dark to pull out a pair of socks, I pulled out a pair that Catherine sent to me when our family was in all sorts of crisis over the past couple of years. And it says unstoppable on one foot and together on the other foot. So that is a picture of the beauty that is coming to this podcast today. So let's kick this off. Grimes, Grimm, professors, let's do this thing.
I love it so much.
Oh. Elizabeth, how are the blondies? Can you tell us your working parent story, please?
The snapshot is already there because I had to hop up and say, "Oh, hang on, my blonder's 11. I have one of the classes I teach at Georgetown, so I teach a big Intro to International Relations class, and I meet with those TAs at 9 o'clock in the morning because the class is at 9:30. But then I also offer my class as part of a nonprofit called the National Education Opportunity Network. And that is a class, it teaches my class to 350 Title I students all around the country, high school students. And those TAs meet at 9:30 tonight. And one of them has a birthday tomorrow, and he wanted a cookie cake. So I just think birthdays are important to celebrate.
They are.
My
Amen.
working mom story, besides blondies. So there is so much to say. And I should start by the outset by telling everyone listening, you are doing everything right. You are already doing everything right. And it's wonderful. And this is such an incredible resource. And Jason and Lori, you should be so proud of what you have built and what you have created. But we are all getting through it. You are doing everything right. So I have 3 children, just as Jason said in the intro. So I have a middle schooler, I have an elementary schooler, and I have a preschooler who was born on the day of President Biden's inauguration. And so I have insight into sort of all of these different ages. I have 2 boys and a girl. Also, the oldest 2 have been diagnosed with ADHD, and the younger one has not yet been diagnosed, but was multiple times kicked out of her preschool. And to the point that I was told that she has a dictator personality, to which I responded, given my training and line of work, which dictator? Because it's a very different strategy depending on which dictator. So she will very soon. She has an IEP. And so part of my working parent story is it is impossible for me to separate my working parent story from separating my working parent and parent to 3 children with ADHD story, which I think is also essential. And to me, everything in my life comes down to planning and communication. When I was preparing for this podcast, I was reflecting on a faculty meeting that we had last year in which one of my colleagues said, "We have the most flexible job in the world as a professor. You can work any 100 hours of the week that you want to. If you want it to be 3 a.m. to 10 a.m., you can work those hours." And everybody went around the table and laughed. And I was like, it's the worst thing I've ever heard. That's a terrible thing. So for me, one of the parts of our working parent story is that in my partnership with my husband, Jacques, we have one person who's the sort of long-term partner for planning ahead, for appointments, who they're the one when you schedule the dental appointment 6 months out, they are the one that handles that. And I'm the long-term partner because in the future, being a professor can be very flexible. I used to work for the government and my life was not as flexible as it is right now. But then the other parent is what we call the last minute parent. And so when we get the call that Lulu's been kicked out of nursery school and has to be picked up, which was almost every day. It's my husband, Jacques. Jacques works for the government. And so he has more day-to-day flexibility and I have more long-term flexibility. I would say the secret to my life is that I have a strategic plan that I make at the beginning of every semester and every summer. And I'm happy to talk about this at much greater length. I don't want to sort of take too long to get into Catherine's story as well, but I have a strategic plan for all my personal and professional goals. And then every Friday or Saturday, I host a weekly planning meeting with myself in which I match all those specific tasks to a specific time. I am 1,000 years old, and so I use a paper planner because to me, nothing in the virtual world replicates. Thank you.
Jason does too, yes.
I know it. And I was not going to put Jason on the spot, but I met Jason 27 years ago in France when I was there on fellowship and he was supportive. And so I know that I'm 100 years old, but Jason is 100 plus 1. So. But to me, there is so much about planning that has to happen when you are a working parent in academia. And so I'm happy to talk more and we can chat more about the strategic plan and the weekly plan. I also think it's really important for specific one-on-one time with all the kids. So every week each of us have one-on-one dates with each of the kids. We have one-on-one trips every year. But I also try very hard to model behavior to my graduate students, to my undergraduate students, to the students that work on my team, which involves not emailing late at night, schedule send. Whatever robot invented schedule send, I will send them a bouquet of flowers. It has been such a gift to me for trying to model balance. Now, admittedly, I am still sending that email late at night, but to try to send the message to the folks that are on my team and the folks that I work with that my expectation is not that they are responding to emails at midnight and 1 a.m. But no, my bottom line up front is planning and communication, to be sure. But I can talk much more about all those elements later.
I look forward to hearing it. And if you said a weekly date and an annual trip with each of the 3 children, I do want to hear more about how you make that happen too. Catherine, over to you.
Well, Elizabeth, you are much more organized than I am. And I don't know if it's because of our disciplines. I'm a scientist. And as much as I try to predict what my experiments are going to do, they often don't do that. And so maybe I owe my disorganization to my craft, I guess. So I was going to tell you a little bit about the working story of being a parent from a scientist point of view. We have a pretty prescribed way that we have to go about becoming a science professor. There's certain training. It takes a long time to do that. And I think, Elizabeth, what you said when you started was beautiful, like that whatever you're doing right now is right. And there is no one time, I think, right to have a child in the course of academia. I think there's many different points when life decides to happen for it, and you should take that and embrace that and kind of go with what you're given. And my husband and I we decided we would try to start our family after I had this position here at the University of Delaware. So in order to get this job, there's some things that happen. It's not just you go from being an undergraduate to then poof, you're a professor. I went and after I did my graduate training. And then after my graduate training, I had my PhD. I'm officially a doctor, the other kind of doctor. And then from there, I did a postdoc. And for those who don't know what a postdoc is in science, this is kind of an interesting opportunity to inform on science in general. A postdoc is sort of like a residency program for a scientist where you go and you learn maybe something tangential to what your PhD work was on. So I did a postdoc, and both of those things took about 5 years. So it was 5 years for my graduate training to get my PhD, and then 5 years to my postdoc, which was in a different field, more molecular biology and immunology. And then you're ready to apply for jobs, and you're competing when you apply for an academic job. This year, for example, we had a position open in the biology department. 450 people applied for one job. So you're applying and the competition is really thick. And so then you get this position and then they recruit you to come and you start your position. And in my position, I work at a R01 research university where I get research grants. That's how Lori and I were able to work together. I had a training grant from the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, private organizations. I'm writing, so I have a little small business in a way. I also teach classes, both to undergraduates and graduate students. So there's lots of components to my job that are different than maybe what people envision as the professor, or what a professor does. So along that, then we had to figure out like when we were going to have a family. And as a scientist, is thinking about my age and how biology happens. I was getting into my mid-30s, and my husband and I said, well, let's start it now. Even though you're climbing the tenure ladder, we'll just climb it all together at the same time. And so tenure is like, I think Lori and I talked a lot about it. It's sort of like making partner. And in a way, it makes sense. Like I'm investing in the university and she was investing in her firm. And I really wanted to be a permanent member of this university. And so that's tenure. And I think people have heard of tenure before. But to climb that ladder, I thought it was a cool thing. And I was getting a job for 6 or 7 years, where I would try to make my lab. And then I would also try to start my family. And so I knew it was going to be a lot. And my husband and I both knew this wouldn't be a lot to pack on, but we thought, this is what we wanted to try to do. So I started my job here in September of September 2011, and then New Year's Day of January 2012, I found out I was going to have a baby, or we were going to have a baby. And so then he came right at the beginning of September. And then we started our family and my lab at the same time. And it was kind of nutso. And I remember like going to when you had to register for all these gifts, it was the same time that I was buying everything for my group and like setting up my lab and like there I was like analyzing like, oh, what, like everything from expensive instrumentation to buy, which sometimes costs as much as a house, like a $400,000 piece of instrument, versus like these test tubes. So when it came down to buying stuff for the baby, I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't know. It's like so much stuff. So it was like a lot of stuff to think about. So that those sorts of journeys all together. So maybe a different perspective than what Elizabeth, she gave you this big, very organized picture. And I was sort of just operating. We don't just how it was to get here where I am. But again, I think along the way, you could have a baby at any one of these points, like when you're a graduate student, when you're a postdoc, even after post tenure. Many of my colleagues have had their families after they achieved tenure. So I'm lucky that I did. My husband and I got tenure here. I was promoted, and yeah, it was awesome. And I also had another kid too. So I had two children pre tenure. And so it's really good.
I love that image of like the whole family climbing up the ladder together.
We
That's cool.
were
The
definitely
jungle
doing it. It was
gym.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was exciting when I gave my talk. Like they invite you to talk, right? Like right as you're going up for promotion. My son was in kindergarten. He came and he sat and like listened. And I acknowledged my family when I acknowledged my funding agencies at the end, and I acknowledged my laboratory, obviously my students who worked with me. And then my very last slide was my family. And I had taken my kids all with me. Like when I had to travel for big meetings and things, my family came with me. And so I had pictures of them at like national meetings and things like that, and meeting Nobel laureates and things. So it's been really fun and just flexible. And I think I definitely learned that from Lori. So I'm a student of Lori.
You're too kind. I just had a flashback to when I was in college. I would go to a local elementary school as part of like a volunteer thing, and I was teaching sign language to these kindergartners. And one of them, I remember, it was a Monday morning, and it was a like go around the room and tell what you did over the weekend. And she goes, "My daddy just got tenure, so we had a party." And I was like, oh, "A kindergartner knows the word tenure." And I'm like, "Yes, I guess a child of an academic would." Back to you, Elizabeth.
No, but I think I just want to follow up on that because I think, Catherine, it is such a beautiful portrait too, because our kids come along for our journey as well. So I'm a political scientist, and Hamid Karzai, the former leader of Afghanistan, 1 week after my son was born, was on Georgetown's campus. And I was like, well, I'm definitely bringing him to that. And so the kids come along, the kids come along to everything that you are a part of. And it's so magical. My kids are obsessed with international travel, and we have a big placemat in our house that's just world maps, and we love quizzing each other on flags. And it's wonderful to see that sort of intellectual curiosity, even from a young age. But I also just want to say, what is an organized picture now? Only looks that way in hindsight. It only looks that way in hindsight because you try out a lot of models and you find the one that has to work with the way that you are working.
That's right. And just like our path, like my path looked very linear. It's like boom, boom, boom. But that's
Yes.
also only in hindsight, like just trying out different things and how they're going to work and things. So, yeah.
And I feel like, and I'm sure, Catherine, you're the same. I tell this to seniors all the time, right? The things make sense only in hindsight, right? All the decisions that you just make one good decision after another, but there's nothing linear about it.
And try to keep all doors open as much as possible. I try to tell my students that too, like just try to keep doors open because you don't know like when things are going to shift and when you want to not have to close that door. So
That's right. That's
So
right.
much deep wisdom, Grimm and Grimes. Elizabeth, how would you describe more broadly what it is like to be a mom in academia these days, if you had to sort of characterize that juxtaposition of roles?
I will say, first and foremost, I am so grateful for the community of parents that I have here at Georgetown. Georgetown has a nursery school on campus called Hoya Kids. And it was a great way to meet other parents. So it starts at 18 months and goes to 4. And it was a great way to meet parents across the spectrum, in different departments. And I'm very, very grateful for that community of parents. It was really essential. I will say, and I love the podcast of the dads that you all did, the dads who are lawyers, the dads who are in-house counsel, because they talked about the trade-offs that developed, the norms that reshaped after COVID. And I think about how prior to COVID, if your child was sick, you just went home and you were there with them in the afternoon. And I think there is a danger that we are now too accessible. And so I think what it means to be a working parent in academia, I think at least at Georgetown, is that there's an idea that you're always on, right? So even if someone is sick, even if someone, we just had DC public schools spring break. Even though I put in my out of office that we were, and I didn't travel anyway because it's the last week of Georgetown classes, there's still an idea that you should be present, that you should be responding to emails. And so that's part of the reason that I actually don't use Google Calendar, that I use this paper planner, because I think it is very, very important to set boundaries around your time. Because if you don't set the schedule for your time, someone else would be happy to set that schedule
Mm-hmm.
for you. And I do have a very strict schedule. So part of it is dependent on schlepping kids to piano lessons and tennis, all of those sorts of things. But I think for me, what it's like to be a parent in academia is that I have to consciously every semester think about what standard I am going to lower. Because I would say part of being a professor, part of being an academic, is that you are expected to perform 120%, 140% all of the time, right? That you are publishing in the top rated journals, that you are getting cited by the best scholars. And I have to intentionally, and I do mean every single week, I pick a different standard that I will lower because it is possible to maintain 120% in everything. So my mom didn't work outside of the house when we were kids and would bring in the most incredible baked goods for every class celebration and, birthday party and everything like that. And I have held myself to that same standard. And so this year, one of the standards that I lowered was that I said, what if I just bring in popsicles, like old school freezy pops, you know what I'm talking about,
Mm.
where you push up, right? It's basically sugar water. And what will the impact of that be? And you tell me how many children in my son's fourth grade class were upset with a freezy pop. And I'm telling you, zero, right? So a lot of times these standards that we hold ourselves, they are artificial. And we are the ones who are running ragged trying to meet them. And so I think the describing a mom in academia, for me, I have to regularly think, what can I delegate? What can I delete? What can I declare done? And every single day, I try to prioritize tasks in that way. What can I delegate? What can I delete? What can I declare done? And so I do not have test tubes. I'm a political scientist. I don't even, if someone handed me a test tube, I'm not sure what I would do with it. Probably put brownie batter in it or something, right? But instead, my primary focus is research and writing. I'm an undergraduate concentration chair. I'm the head of teaching in the security studies program. I'm the director of our Intel concentration. So there are a lot of meetings, but there's a lot of writing output that is expected. And so for me, it is very, very important to be able to prioritize my tasks into what requires my full brain, what requires half of my brain, and what could I do citation work, what could I do at the end of the day. And so every week during that weekly plan, I will bin my writing tasks into sort of A, B, and C writing tasks. And then for me, I used to be a great writer from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And I am no longer a great writer from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And instead now I try to be pretty protective of the first hour of my day
Mm-hmm.
just to get writing done. And so I don't allow anyone to schedule meetings. I try very, very hard not to have any conflicts because that is my sort of sharpest human brain. And so all my independent writing I will do first thing. And then the afternoon sleepy time, if I'm not having office hours or other meetings, that to me are the sort of B tasks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can do revising, I can do editing. And then the C tasks to me are sort of just following up on tasks, checking citations, things like that. And that I can do with my feet up with my three-legged dog next to me. But for me, it is really, really setting boundaries around time,
Mm-hmm.
which I think which is essential to do. The
Yeah.
one pure benefit is that I don't have a big commuting time. As Jason said, I live
Roll
on
out the door.
campus.
Yes.
No, I mean, quite
Yeah.
literally.
What you're talking about in terms of that hour and blocking that time reminds me of, I think he's a fellow Georgetown colleague, Cal Newport's work, Deep Work, which I think at least influenced me in terms of reminding me how important it is for that like unbroken time and how we have to prioritize it or it just doesn't magically happen.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I set a timer for 30 minutes and I close everything else and I just write for
Mm-hmm.
30 minutes.
Yep.
And it is a gift. I mean, it is truly a gift to have unbroken time just to focus on one
Mm-hmm.
singular thing.
Yeah.
And I talk to my students about this a lot too, the importance of unitasking rather than multitasking and
Yeah.
giving something your full focus.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it is essential.
Yeah. Catherine, over to you. How would you describe what it's like to be mom in academia?
Right now, especially as a scientist, we're in uncharted waters. So things are changing. Well, everything that I've learned about how to um, kind of obtain funding from my group has been thrown out the window, and we're every week or so it changes. So it's definitely unnerving, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's how I fund my lab, and those are I have graduate students. So Elizabeth, I'm not sure if you have graduate students that work with you, but I have graduate students that I fund not only through TA shifts for TAing with me, but then they're working on they're working on my lab's research projects that we come up together. They're developing their thesis around those projects, but then we're also doing work that it serves the public good. And so trying to fuel that little company that I have here is really hard. And so I think that's been extremely stressful, and we're kind of all holding our breaths to see how long we can sustain this sort of instability. So I do like unpredictability, and I like to be able to control and like respond to change. I think that's a good thing, but I think this level of uncertainty is, I think, very stressful. So
Yeah.
trying to deal with that, I think, is unprecedented. Um, yeah, but I do think this idea of having boundaries, and especially I think what Elizabeth said, like having the ability to kind of say what you're not going to. I think we're all very competitive, or maybe type A personalities. If you've risen to the top of like of being a professor in academia, or not to the top, but you've risen to this level of being a professor, you're very hypercritical of yourself, and so how you can control that, and be kind to yourself. I think, Laura, you've taught me a lot of that too. Like, where can you just be like, I think you've had me like think about what would you do like to a friend, and then maybe you treat yourself that way kind of thing. So I think that has been really helpful. So I've learned a lot from you, Lori, in that way, like how to lower some of my expectations for myself. And so just letting things get done to get done, but maintaining standards. But Elizabeth, you have a much more analytical approach to it, and I really like. I'm like, oh, I'm really taking notes here. It was really, really fantastic what you said. But no, it's really just trying to respond to all the uncertainty right now.
Chaos. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Thank you for that, Catherine. And yes, I do strongly believe that self-compassion is one of the most important tools in working parenthood. Jason, over to you.
And just to take in what both of you had said. Catherine, you had said earlier how you experiment, and that experimenting is a large part of what you do. And I think in this moment of uncertainty, that ability to experiment because of what's changed is likely going to serve you well, because you already know how to experiment. And so, but at the same time, it's hard to experiment in a with all these different moving forces. And I think what Elizabeth had said that really resonated was these artificial standards that we create for ourselves, that nobody else has those standards but us. And a part of boundary setting is also letting go of standards that may no longer be serving us as we're trying to do what we need to do for both our work, our families, all those things. Catherine, I want to stay with you for a second. What were the benefits that your employer provided that were helpful when you became a parent, and what was useful, and what would have hoped for if you didn't have everything? So walk us through that a little bit.
So the process of in science world anyway, of what you're given for parental leave has significantly changed a lot, like in the past 30 or so years. So my colleagues who were in front of me, who had their children maybe 10 or 15 years ago, they were told, try to have your kid over spring break or in the summer, because then if you had your baby over spring break, you'd have like 6 or 7 days before you had to get back in the classroom again and teach. And I did not have that. But mine was my leave policy was up to the discretion of the chair. There was no formal leave policy when I had my kids. So I was thankful my chair let me have a teaching release that semester following like the birth. Both of my kids were born in August and September, so then I have to teach in the fall. And then we have a January term, so I didn't teach until February. That was the first time I had to go back after but I still had my research lab, which was I still maintained talking to them, and that was before the era of Zoom. So we had Skype. I had my
Skype.
office
Yes.
Skype. I had office on campus keyed so my grad students could go in there. And that way when they met with me, they would be in my office, but then I would be at home. Like, so, but that was like we were working all that stuff. So there was no formal leave policy. And then thinking about this interview, I met with HR to ask them, like, what is it like now? Like, let's pretend I'm having a kid. Like, what are you telling me? And they would be like, oh, now you get. So now I think there's been some like discussions between the faculty union and then also the school and then the state. And now it's standard that you get 12 weeks FMLA. So FMLA was not applied to faculty. It was applied to everybody else at the school, but not faculty when I had my kids. My husband took FMLA. But I did not get FML. I didn't have formal FMLA. So I do think it is tricky though, like as scientists, when you do have the university be giving you one thing, but as I mentioned, like you get grants from federal institutions and they're giving you money and they expect you to keep rolling with that research. Like, so I think you have to communicate not only with your university, but then also like any federal agency that's giving you funds, like you have to tell them like, hey, I'm going to be pausing the clock and then you have to, I think what you have to do is assign someone to take over the management of those research dollars while you're formally out on, if you declare that you're formally out on leave. So I think that was a large part why maybe they were reluctant to give faculty members FMLA because it made like it gave us more flexibility, I think, in managing our research if we wanted to say that we were taking a break from teaching, but we could still manage our research labs, which is helpful. So.
Wow. So there's like a secondary stakeholder that if you're a scientist, you need to think through if you're getting federal grants. That's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about it that way.
Yeah. No, I've had friends who have said they're taking sabbatical and they forgot to tell their program officers at the NIH, for example, and they said, wait a second, where are you going now? Like, you can't just be piecing out on us for your sabbatical because you're responsible for these dollars that you signed up for. So.
It's almost like having a second employer of
It
sorts.
is having a second employer.
Wow. Fascinating.
We draw salary from them. They cover,
Right.
we can draw some of our effort.
Interesting. Elizabeth, what's been your experience?
So mine is slightly different. And we, as a political scientist, right, we many of us don't have those same demands. I will say, and I really appreciate Catherine saying this, I reflect often about the generation of parents that came before us. And I've heard so many similar stories, right, of, I mean, spring break, long weekends, right? And folks having to come back after a long weekend, which I can't fully fathom. I think one of the interesting things that I've noted, because there's almost a decade between my oldest and my youngest, is just how much things have changed in the decade since in that time period. Similar to Catherine's story, though, for my first and my second, it was up to my department chair. And so for my first, he was born June 19th, and I was asked to come back when he was 8 weeks old, the third week of August. And I was not emotionally equipped for that. There's a picture of me at convocation holding this little niblet, right? He's like this big, and I'm in all my big graduation gowns. And I was a mess. So that was for my first. So I went back full time when he was 8 weeks old because the demands of our department, because of the teaching demands. Then for my second, I had a different department chair, and he was born in November, and I was given until August. So basically the spring I was given leave, still was not paid, but was allowed to come back in August. And then DC passed its different laws, and as a DC resident, and then Georgetown also updated its policies. And so for my third, who again was born on Inauguration Day in 2021, I was given a semester paid by Georgetown, and then the fall semester paid by DC. DC paid for 16 weeks. And so she was born January 2021, and I came back full-time January 2022. And when I say it was transformative, because also, I mean, no one was vaccinated when she was born. And so there was so much fear and uncertainty, and she was so tiny, and I just worried endlessly about COVID and all the other attendant challenges. But I'm endlessly grateful for Georgetown for updating its policy, and for DC. It's so inhumane. It is so inhumane. My thought that I kept coming back to at 8 weeks was that he had just started laughing. Like, I'd worked so hard to make my oldest son laugh, and then I had to go away and somebody else got to benefit from his laughing, if that makes sense. And it's such a strange thing to focus on, but that was what I thought a lot. him at 8 weeks. That was very hard.
The national stats are that 25% of women in the United States return to work after 2 weeks, a full
I know.
quarter. It's ridiculous. Anyway, paid leave, national policy. We need it now. Back to you, Jason.
I mean, if you are breastfeeding, your boobs are still leaking at 2 weeks. Like I can't even fathom. Sorry, Jason, but like
No,
it's challenging. Anyway.
no. There's what you're describing, and yes, there's clearly a lot more that we need to move forward on. But how interesting, Elizabeth, what you were able to get in your first child and what you were able to see in your third child, and you were able to like feel for yourself to have a year with your own child. There are so many developed countries that have that. I'm just sitting with that, and it's just we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. So,
Absolutely.
wanted to say something, Elizabeth?
We used to have neighbors who were Norwegian diplomats, and every time we saw them, they were like, "Oh, this is barbaric."
Yes.
Right? Because they get, I think, 2 years paid, and their job is guaranteed. Anyway.
All right.
We're gonna keep working on it. Back to Catherine, and I want to switch gears a little bit because oftentimes people get asked, well, what was your major, as a way to kind of project out your career trajectory. I'm much more of a fan of the following question. What was a job that you had in high school? Your first job, like a real job, and what did you learn from it? So take us back, Catherine, to like middle school, high school. What were you up to?
So I babysat for a long time, but then my first job where I got like a paycheck where they took taxes out of it, which I was super excited to get. I don't know why. I was like, I'm going to get this job and getting a real paycheck, not. So it was Papa John's. I worked at Papa John's. I was the girl who answered the phone when you called. I would be like, Papa John's, how can I help you? Can I take your order? And I also got to go, and this was back, we talked about your love of paper, both of you. We would put paper coupons in the doors, like so you go and coupon. And so that was awesome when we'd show up and they'd be like, you guys are going couponing. So they would give us like huge bags of coupons and we'd walk around and put them in the door. So no, I love the coupons. So what the people would call, Papa John's probably, I don't work for them anymore, but they would call and they'd be like, oh, I'm like, how can I take your order? And they'd be like, oh, I want 2 of this, 2 of that. I'm like, oh, I have a coupon for that. And they'd be like, I don't have that coupon. I'm like, I got the codes. I'm like, where's that? And so I gave a lot of discounts.
I said she was generous and kind and
Wow.
thoughtful.
It was really fun. I got to somehow, and we were having I got to help top pizzas and stuff. So no, it was fun. I really liked working at Papa John's. It was my first job.
I did not know that about you, Catherine. That's
my senior year.
And what do you take from your Papa John's experience, either as a parent or as a scientist, that you think about from being on the phone or passing out coupons that you think was useful?
I think that I work with carbohydrates, and those are pizzas. So I'm a carbohydrate chemist, and maybe that is where I got it. I don't know. Like I love working with bread. It never left me. Maybe the aroma. I actually study yeast too now, so that. So maybe is that fundamental? No, the work ethic of those people, like those people, the drivers, the people that showed up to make the pizzas. Like I was just a high school student, but the people who were doing that job and like doing it, like they cared about that job, and it was and helping other people, servicing other people, like the service industry. I think I took a lot of that out of it. Like I still love helping other people. Ultimately, that's the bottom line of my job. And being a kid and being a parent, like I'm constantly like loving my children. So I think that is good from Papa John's. So
from Papa John's to yeast to science to motherhood, you're still in service. I love it. Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. Elizabeth. Yeah. Well, tell us your first job story.
Prepare to be jealous, everyone, because I still think I peaked at 18 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My first job was at the local video store. And Jason, I say this to students every day, and my freshmen look at me, and they're like, I don't know what that means. And I'm like, imagine you went on a Friday night and there were only 2 copies of Usual Suspects. And if you couldn't get it, and they were like, I truly still don't know what those words mean.
Usual
It was the
Suspects.
greatest. I
That was
know.
on my college application. I had to list my favorite movie, and at the time, that is what I wrote on my college application.
Lori, at the time, I would still say that that's a top
There you
10
go.
movie.
We have
Solid
to
movie.
watch that with our children, I think.
We
Oh,
should.
Yes,
We really
haven't done
should.
that yet.
It was the greatest. I truly think I peaked very, very sincerely early. So I worked at a video store all 4 years of high school. In college, I worked in a candy store in Colonial Williamsburg. It's just, and then I studied torture. It was the most
Wow.
wonderful job. And what I take from it now, Jason, I get on Jeopardy and the category is 90s movies. I will crush that section because when I say to you that I've seen every movie that came out from 1995 to 1999, that is a friggin' fact. But I would truly say on a different note, I mean, I think it's very important. I think it's really important to prioritize joy. And I think it's important every day to give yourself a treat. And I don't mean a reward for things that you've done well, but it is very important to prioritize joy. The other thing I would say is that we had a lot of regular customers. I mean, this was not, and my students will then say if they've heard of it, they'll say Blockbuster. And I was like, ooh, Blockbuster put us out of business before Netflix put them out of business. But it's just true mom and pops. And so I memorized everybody's names, so the regulars that came in, as a way of just sort of binding them to the community. And that to me is still an essential practice. So I teach the big Introduction to International Relations class at Georgetown. It's mostly first year and sophomores. And so there are 200 students in that class, and I will memorize everybody's name before the semester starts. And part of it is just a way of, one, it's a sort of scare tactic of like, well, if you skip class, I also live on campus. I'll see you, and I'll say it. But at the bigger end, I mean, it is just a way of investing time and energy. The single greatest gift that we can give to any human is time. And so investing time to just learn your name, I also think it's a basic requirement of humanity, right? The number of students that have said to me that they've taken classes, a class of 5, a class of 10, in which the professor over 14 weeks did not learn their name. I mean, that is preposterous.
Yeah.
So
it's the personalization. And that is the biggest human gift that we can give to each other is to say, I see you, I've learned your name.
That's right.
So that's a great gift.
I mean, do any of you remember all the classes you took senior year or all the No, I couldn't even tell you from many of the classes 2 or 3 things that I remember. But students will remember that you invested time and care and empathy. Georgetown is a Catholic and Jesuit institution, and I'm neither Catholic nor Jesuit, obviously. But to me, the Jesuit approach of cure personalis, which is approaching each person as a unique individual, a unique set of stories, a unique background, to me is the absolute baseline requirement for education. I really think it is essential. And I think Network Video, shout out to Network in the great video store in the sky where she's now laid to rest. But it was the greatest. Oh, my friends would just come and hang out. I could take home endless amounts of videos. Do you remember the rewind machine?
Oh, yes.
And on credit card, I feel like now I'm an old person, right? The credit card was like,
that thing that...
Yes, we all just made the same gesture on a podcast. The choo-choo. Oh, it's the best. And I think about it.
You had to like pull the thing and it would have to go across all the 3 because there was like 3 different copies. Like one was the original, one went to you, and one went somewhere else that we don't know.
Somewhere else. God only knows, right?
My goodness.
Right?
Anyway,
it was the best. It was the best.
In the interest of time, I'm going to just double up on the next question. Okay?
You go for it, Lori. You double up.
For it. Yes. Gotta keep the train on the tracks here. Catherine, we'll go over to you. And I want to hear 2 things. One, what skills do you think you've gained through parenthood that are useful in your career? And in what ways is parenthood like or unlike the work that you do in your lab?
All right. So I think, and again, you taught me a lot, Lori, but it's this sense of adventure. And you teaching me that how much adventure can be fun. And I take this to my students as well and to my kids. Like, we're on a big adventure. And in general, they all like this idea. And I tell them that and to my kids, I feel like right now, I'm like the cruise ship director as we approach like the summer season. But I feel like I am like their guide. And I promised my class, I promised my lab, and I promised my kids that I'm going to be a kind guide, and I'm going to always have kindness in my backpack and like helping them. And I tell that to my class every semester when we start teaching. And I think, and then my research group, that we don't know what our adventure, and that's like what an adventure is. Like, we don't know what's on our path and like how we're going to go, but I have some tools in my backpack, and we're going to learn and grow together. So thinking it about as an adventure, like that's all one big adventure. It's like one big adventure. Yeah.
I love that. Experimentation, adventure, it's all part of the same theme.
All
Over to
packaged
you,
in there.
Elizabeth. How about you? Same
Oh my goodness,
two
so
pieces
many.
there. And tell us about your book, please. The upcoming one.
To me, so I'm an international relations scholar, and international relations is everything. International relations is life, is my personal belief. But I'll talk first about sort of the skills in parenthood, that are useful in my career. And the first is that I have to give a shout out to our family's therapist, Dr. Rachel LaFleur, that we have worked through all of our ADHD children. And so many of these skills have labeled praise. So we do a lot of labeled praise in parenting, right? What a wonderful idea. I was really so impressed when you did X. And I use those every single day with my students, specific skills. The importance of clear communication. So asking students to do one thing at a time, positively state things instead of negatively state them, making specific demands rather than vague demands. I would say the number one skill that I employ, though, is that Dr. Rachel taught us these pride skills that you praise, reflect, imitate, describe, and enjoy. And particularly relates to neurodivergent children, but I apply it every day with my students. So I praise the activities, I describe what they've done, I reflect it. And again, it just shows that that I'm listening, right? That I'm committed to who they are. So I would say almost every parenting skill I apply to my career. In what ways is parenthood like my field of research? Well, as Jason introduced and Lori just said, when I was on maternity leave with my middle son, who would nurse and then sleep for 3.5 hours. Like, he would metabolize 10,000 calories. And because he was my second, I didn't put a mirror under his nose to make sure he was still breathing. I was like, he's fine. I started drafting a manuscript about how everything I know about parenting, I've learned from international relations theory. And so I drafted this 100,000-word manuscript when I was on maternity leave with him, and it has taken, he turned 10 in November, so I will, all you savvy numbers people out there, figure out how long it took me to finish it and edit it. But it has a chapter on nuclear deterrence. It has a chapter on torture. It has a chapter on hostage negotiation. It has a chapter on insurgency, because all of these theories and frameworks for international relations are very applicable in parenting. I mean, when we think about insurgency, insurgents have less power than the counterinsurgent, right? The Viet Cong, Al Qaeda, and yet they win because they have the willpower. And I think about this, my youngest, who has the force of nature. She can go boneless. Somehow she can liquefy her body and turn her 50 pounds into nothingness, right? So they are all insurgents. And so in the back half of the book, I have, how Mao says that you can win, how Che Guevara says that you can win. The key of nuclear deterrence is to communicate a threat, to have the capability to back it up, and to have the credibility to know that you will follow through. And when I say that I issue nuclear deterrent threats every freaking day, like, if you put those peas up your nose, I will take your plate away from you. That is a nuclear deterrent threat. You communicate the threat, you back. I mean, that happened yesterday. Like, and so I just find, for me, international relations is the study of how states and non-state actors come together, and it is so applicable to parenting. I mean, I'm a torture scholar, and well studied is acoustic violence. Music is torture, right? The use of music on detainees at Guantanamo, songs like the Sesame Street theme, right? Enter Sandman, The Real Slim Shady, all of these we know. I think about that every time I've played Let It Go in the last 5 years, or the soundtrack to K-pop Demon Hunters. That has formed a new neural pathway in my brain. But I think there are so many connections. I truly believe, and I'm sure that Catherine would say the same thing, I believe that I'm a better scholar because I'm a parent, and I think that I'm a better parent because I'm a scholar. And the patience and the curiosity and the love of learning that has driven my entire life, I think, has also made me a patient, curious, and joyful parent. My kid's favorite game to play is the Russians in Afghanistan, in which we have balls and paper towel rolls that they throw as we played this last night, as Stinger missiles. And so half the family are Mujahideen and half are Soviet helicopters. I mean, these are life skills for kids to learn before they grow up. So
Absolutely. Before we do the last question, can you give us the 60-second overview of your planning? Because I'm just like leaving myself on a
yes.
cliffhanger here, and I know we can't really get
Oh,
into the depths of
no,
it,
no,
but
no.
just
I
like give me an
can do it in
overview.
60 seconds. Full shout out to the National Center for Development and Diversity. So I truly cannot emphasize them enough. If I have learned anything of how to be a good academic, it is from that organization. It is an organization focused on setting personal goals and professional goals for academics. And so I did the program in 2017. Catherine, if you have not done it,
I've
tell
never
all
done it.
about
No,
it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing. And then I became a small group coach. So I coach a group. And so you set a strategic plan. So you literally jot out all the hats that you wear, then all the goals underneath those hats, then all the tasks. And we're a semester program. So I do bicep, but then also the personal goals. So like cook a new recipe a week, play tennis, what have you. Then the bottom of that strategic plan is that you map it to specific weeks. So you literally go through your calendar. And then second component is that you have a weekly planning meeting. So I will sit down for 20 minutes and I will jot out all of the things that I need to do and then map it to a specific time in my calendar. It is, I truly cannot say enough. So NFCDD is the National Center for Development and Diversity. They are exquisite at promoting transformational outputs in research and writing, but also helping academics. I mean, I think Catherine said it best. We are all competitive people. We are all people who, worked really hard through undergrad and high school. And but also the component of being an academic is that it can be lonely and miserable and full of self-doubt and inadequacy. And so a program like this, it both builds a community, but it gives you skills for improved research and writing, but then also the importance of setting personal goals as well. So it was through that program that one of my personal goals was to have one-on-one time with each of my kids every week.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us the name. We'll drop the link in show notes. And also, I can't wait to read your book. So over to you, Jason, for our final question here.
Yes. Catherine, close us out. With 2020 hindsight, what piece of advice would you give yourself when you became a parent? What would Catherine of today tell Catherine who just became a parent?
So what Elizabeth said was that we learn so much from being a parent and being an academic, and they kind of feed off each other. You learn it if you don't hide one from the other. And I would say that when I was becoming a parent, I very much wanted to look what I thought society perceived to be a professor, and maybe hid my family from my professional life because I didn't think like a bunch of scientists wanted to hear from a woman who had babies. So I think not hiding it, and just now when I've now merged them all and I talk about my kids in my class and I talk about my lab I talk about my lab at home and things. I didn't just letting that naturally, organically come together. I think just be yourself, and it will all work out. That's what I would say.
Beautiful.
Love it. Mom and scientist and mega woman all together. Excellent. Elizabeth, close us out.
Catherine, I just wrote down what you said and I circled it as well. When I first started, so as a woman in security, I already felt like it was hard to be taken seriously. And so when my son Hugo was first born, I didn't put any pictures up. I had no artwork. I really wanted to make it out like, no, I'm still a serious, like, don't mess with me person. And now, I mean, I live on campus. They see me in the laundry room. They see me wrestling with my kids out in the yard. So I fully agree with it. The one piece that I would simply say, and again, because there are 10 years basically between my oldest and youngest, is that I wish I had appreciated more my parents' physical ability to help out with my oldest in ways that they are not, just with the passage of time. And I took so much for granted and didn't even fully appreciate what an amazing job my parents did as parents until I became a parent. And then I called my mom and I was like, man, and you did this in the 80s? I mean, we didn't have seatbelts then, but I think what being a parent has truly done, our family's core values are generosity and gratitude. And I am fully and deeply grateful for my parents' ability and their amazing stretches that they did. And really reflective of what they were able to help us with in those first few years when we had my oldest. It's really wonderful.
Amazing.
Grateful indeed.
I want to thank my parents too, just in case. Sorry. Oh my God, I thank my parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Hail to thanking parents. I love it.
You two are both incredible. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us. Hooray for all the moms in academia everywhere. And stay tuned for a conversation with some dads in academia so we can round out the whole parental equation. Awesome.
Hey, hooray for Lori and
Awesome.
Jason, though. You guys, like,
Thank you
Elizabeth
so
has
much.
said, a beautiful community. I'm honored to be a part of it. So thank you guys for doing this.
100%. It's so
Thank you.
important. Such a great resource. Thank you all
Thank
so much.
you.
And I think watch Usual Suspects. Everybody should rent it, right?
Everyone
Everybody
should watch Usual
Usual
Suspects.
Good
I
homework
don't see it.
assignment, Professor
Years.
Grimm. Good job.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.